Welcome to Peaceful Power Conversations. Peaceful Power Project is a podcast dedicated to mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual health and well-being. Peaceful Power Conversations is a gift and an opportunity for me to connect with and actually learn from. That's what I'm feeling today. I cannot wait to learn from the guests that we have on Conversations, but specifically today's guest, Rose Yodzio. So Rose and I met. Oh, I didn't even ask permission. Do I have permission to share? Okay.
Yes, please.
Rose and I met in what I would call a business mentorship program. And I always felt wisdom vibes and am really excited for this opportunity to connect more, to go deeper, and like I said before, to learn from Rose. So lucky you, listener, and lucky me today. So I actually read the bio, so I will be looking down. We also have this podcast on YouTube. So if you would like to catch us over on YouTube, you can. So I will be looking down. And I ask that, Rose, that you listen to your bio. So to the words that you chose to express kind of in this like really short vehicle, like who you are and what you do. And it's beautiful. Rose helps women over 40 balance their hormones so that they can manage their weight and other hormone-related symptoms of perimenopause and menopause without a restrictive, all-or-nothing food mentality. Rose was an elementary school teacher for over 30 years, except she's only 30, so she's been teaching since birth.
Oh, you're my favorite.
And for a lot of those years, she struggled with digestive issues, migraines, and exhaustion. After years of restricting her diet, punishing her body with exercise, and pushing through, in quotes, when she was exhausted, her hormones were extremely unbalanced. This journey led her to this path as a health coach so that others don't have to suffer with symptoms they are told are normal as we age. While they may be common, they are definitely not inevitable. And I was so excited. I actually was reviewing this to prepare for the interview, and I was just like beaming with excitement. And I shared with Rose, I was having a conversation actually with a friend under 40. I am proudly 44. But just speaking of stress and hormones and all of it this morning. So I'm definitely going to recommend this podcast. So if you're not over 40, this is a great space for you, especially with the 4 pillars that in the podcast Rose will share, because though this is a very special time, perimenopause and menopause, this conversation is also much broader than that, as well as like Rose's knowledge and insight. So first, thank you, Rose, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
How did it feel to listen to your bio, the words you chose to identify like who you are and what you do?
Well, it's funny to put my journey in a nutshell like that. I think that's true for everyone. But I love the fact that you said, if you're not 40 yet, don't discount this. Because I feel like if I could tell my younger self some of these things, and what we're going to talk about today starts the minute that you hit adulthood. And I think for a lot of women, especially, and not just to say once you become a mom, but especially once you become a mom and take on more responsibility. So I think that I know for me, this is a journey that started in my 20s and 30s.
I love that. I love your additional insight as to this is a conversation for everyone. It's funny, something I just had like light bulbs about was, so I am, I guess, what society would call like an older mom. Many of my mom friends of children in my age group of my children are in the 37, they're 37. I don't know. So I'm a bit older than some of them. And my mother had me 11 years younger than I was when I had my children. And the light bulbs were, she was going through perimenopause when I was a teenager. How the universe puts those two things like in synchronicity, just all of these hormone changes. So hopefully, because of that I'm older, I'll have like something spared there. But when I realized that, and what I remember, the things that stand out in my childhood that I looked at not in a great light as a kid, seeing my mom go through these things. Oh, I mean, obviously, I can't expect my children to have this type of empathy, but knowing what I know now about the changes of perimenopause and menopause, and I was just a kid thinking like she was crazy. So that was a big light bulb of just like understanding that going through very similar hormonal changes at the same time as your children must be tough for the grown up, more so than the kid.
I'm so glad that you said that. My mom was 38 when she had me, which when I was born, that was really old. Now it's very common, but not then. So that was true for me as well. When I became a teen, my mom was also going through menopause. I know that now in retrospect. But one of the reasons that I do what I do is because no one was talking about it. There was no space for this. It was just, women at that time were going to their doctors and their doctors were prescribing, anti-anxiety medication and things like that to control their symptoms. So,
Absolutely. And it points me from what you just shared and my memories as well to not only not having conversation about perimenopause and menopause, but also mental health as well. And so we have come a long way. And I'm grateful to have a voice like yours out there to educate and to share. Let's start with the start. I'd love to start with your story in a way that like you just shared, what inspired you to move into this path to what you are doing now.
yeah, for sure. So when I was younger, I had a very close family member who did not take care of her health at all. She died at a very young age from complications from type 2 diabetes that, she was really something that she had the power to control. And I watched her do that from the time that she was in her late 20s to when she finally passed. And so for me, that was a motivation when I was very young to kind of not be like that. I don't know if that's a good motivation or bad, but that was my motivation to not be that way. But unfortunately for me, that led me to a lot of restriction, a lot of yo-yo dieting, a lot of processed diet foods, a lot of, intense cardio that didn't necessarily serve me at certain times in my life. And in my 30s, I developed celiac disease, which is an autoimmune condition. And it took years to get it diagnosed. So I had years that I suffered with migraines and digestive issues and joint pain and fatigue, that everyone told me that everything was okay. And so I just kind of pushed through. I raised my kids, I worked full time as a teacher, and I was honestly exhausted. When I finally got diagnosed with celiac disease, I did get some relief. I got rid of the migraines and I got rid of some of the digestive issues. But then what I noticed as I moved into my 40s, it didn't just all go away. So I just had a cascade of hormone imbalance that had built up for years. And so I finally had to take matters into my own hands because I was getting no real answers other than pills handed to me from doctors, in my experience. I know that's not everyone's experience, but for me, it took me years to find a practitioner that I could really work with and get help. So I just wanted to be the one, when I was ready to leave teaching, I wanted to be the one to help and be that person that people could turn to help them get solutions for, like I always say, and I said it in my bio, these problems are very common. These symptoms are so common, but they are not inevitable.
And is that where did you get I don't know if it's training or education with nutrition counseling?
Yes. So the year that I decided to leave teaching, I took a year to really kind of focus on what I wanted to do and what direction I wanted to go in. And I made the decision to enroll in the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. It really felt right to me because integrative nutrition connects the dots between physical, mental, and emotional wellness and how we think about ourselves and the foods we eat. So it kind of looks at the whole person, which that really spoke to me as a former teacher because that's what I used to try to do with my students as well. We don't just look at the root cause of disease, we kind of look at the whole picture, the whole lifestyle, and form a partnership with individuals or groups to empower and support them in achieving their personal goals related to their health and wellness. So I did that for a year. It took me a year to get my certification. And I was just in my first year of business when I met you through our coaching program.
Really? That's amazing. Thank you for sharing the journey to what made that decision to pivot or shift into something that not only supports your, right? Like I find when I'm serving, I also am much more likely to be in that practice mode and taking care of myself mode. It's much it just comes very naturally to sit in the seat of the yoga teacher. Like I practice way more when I'm teaching way more, and it just goes hand in hand. Before I kind of continue, and I would love to touch upon the 4 pillars, but before I can continue, how do you, I usually do this as the last question, but how do you take care of you? How do you take care of you? That's my question.
Great question. So I definitely practice what I preach for sure. I always have my own coach. For years I had my own health coach, my own nutrition coach. And once I kind of figured that out, I now am working with a business coach, because that's the thing that I'm learning to do better. I always feel like, we're not meant to do this alone. And I always make the analogy. I actually think our business mentor was the first person who pointed this analogy out, but I think it's so important to see that as parents, or if you're not a parent, maybe your parent did that for you. We're so, you know, ready to do this for our children if they want to get better at soccer. My own children were, I have a baseball player and a competitive figure skater, and I was always paying for coaches for them. But we don't do that for ourselves. We don't always put ourselves in community. So that's number one. I think that is so, so important. For me, I prioritize sleep, which is number one for me. I found that's something that really affects me. If I don't get enough sleep, I get sick. I just can't do what I need to do. I move my body every day. I prioritize my nutrition. It's dialed in for what I need. We're all bio individual, so it's different for all of us. And for me, I have a kind of a toolkit of stress relieving activities that I feel like I pull from either in my morning routine or my evening routine. It just depends on what I need in the day. But for me, it's journaling, reading, walking outside, meditation and breath work. And I don't do all of that every day if that sounds overwhelming to everyone, but it's what I need in that day. So that's really how I take care of myself.
And you also pulled us into the 4 pillars.
Yes, I did. I did.
I only know that because I just read them in
Yep.
preparing, but that's exactly it. Can we please, now this will be a selfish moment. However, I am sure a listener or multiple will be just on bated breath. Sleep. So for me, I will share that, there's the things we can control, there's the things we can't control. There's, may I have the serenity to accept those things I don't have control over, and the courage to have, like, to change the things I can, to do the things that I do have control over, this wisdom to know the difference. Well, my wisdom, and I'm going to own that I could be wrong, and I want to be wrong, and I want you to help me, is that sleep very much feels like something I cannot control. So nutrition and
Mm.
movement, meditation and breath work, these active things in my conscious world, I've worked hard to arrive at this place where it does come with less effort and more ease. That's just my lifestyle. But the sleep, and I know there's benefit, and I know there's detriment to the lack of it. I experience the detriment to the lack of it. So please tell us, when you say I prioritize sleep,
Hmm.
okay, tell us.
Okay. Okay, well, let's start backwards. I think that in our society, lack of sleep is like a badge of honor. Oh, I only got 4 hours of sleep tonight, but let's go, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Like, I could go on and on, right? So that's the first thing. A lot of times it feels like when you actually take care of yourself, you're fighting those societal norms. And that can be really hard for people. So that's number one. And I always start by saying, no matter what change you're trying to make, whether it's sleep or something else, extra grace is required for you. And I'm just going to say the older we are, the more grace is required because, we've built patterns over our lives. And the longer we've done something, the harder it is to break habits or to create new ones. It's not easy to change, and change doesn't happen overnight. That's one of the reasons why in my programs I give people lifelong access, because change doesn't happen in 12 weeks. It starts and you plant a seed. So I just want to say that. Goals are great and all about results, but it's really systems and processes that lead to results, and that takes time. So just want to say that even when it comes to our sleep, because what I tell people are, first of all, you need to decide how much sleep is your goal, right? And then you have to kind of count back from when you need to wake up. So then once you make that decision, you have to commit to it, and you can't do it all at once. I suggest that people start 15 minutes earlier. And then when they've got that, start another 15 minutes earlier. I'm all about 1% better each week, right? I tell people when it comes to sleep, start in the morning. And I know you know this, and I think you do this, get some sunlight in your eyes in that first hour of the day. It sounds crazy, but it makes a huge difference. Outside without sunglasses, even like 10 minutes. And then you've got to create an evening routine for yourself, which again is super hard because most of us are exhausted at the end of the day, and we just want to sit on the couch and either scroll through our phones and watch TV. What I suggest for people is a good hour screen free, because that blue light really, really messes with our circadian rhythm. So, it's a process. I make the analogy of our children. Again, if you're a parent, you probably do this with your children. If you're not a parent, maybe someone did this for you. You never just put your child to bed and say, like, good night, go to sleep now. No, there's usually a bath. Maybe there's story time. Maybe you snuggle a little bit. Whatever it is, there's that routine. But yet, as adults, we don't do that for ourselves because we don't have time. We're too exhausted. We're whatever it is. So again, it's just kind of gentle steps. Maybe it's a cup of tea. Maybe it's a hot bath. There's not one magic bullet for everyone, but I will say that the stopping the screen time as soon as you can within that hour before bed does make a huge difference for most people. And really, no one wants to do it. It's probably the hardest. The most pushback I get from clients is that screen time before bed. So those are my tips for sleep, but it's a hard one.
Love it. I just listened to a podcast, and it will sound strange. I'm to compare it to this, but it is Sally McRae's podcast. Oh, it's called Strong. I'll find it, but she says the phrase at the end. It's called Choose Strong with Sally McRae. And this podcast was about running. I mean, she's just like wins all the ultra, like crazy 200-mile races. So this is a 240-mile race. And at the end, she's talking about like the pain. And she says, the prize is greater than the pain. And I know she's talking about a running feat that I don't even have an interest. I don't have even an interest in it. But right away, tears welled up in my face because it makes me think of my recovery. It makes me think of these choices to like live 1% better every day and to be the best mom I can be. Because for many, I get the pushback because I won't push back because I know the prize is greater than the pain of putting the phone away. And it truly is. You said it. The choice, like this has to be a choice. It has to be that important. It has to be the prize. And if you're having, which I experience, and it doesn't have to get so bad before you make change, but I would say in my life, it is time to change that sleep hygiene and sleep relationship. And so to make that, to make that choice and to take the actions that are necessary. And it will be painful. And no, not as painful as running 240 miles, but in its own like microcosm, which is actually a macrocosm. It's like your whole life is making these changes. We do things it just makes me think of all the little things to implement that people don't want to let go of. So I like to hear that it's the thing that you experience the most resistance, yet when you were sharing the things I do, the self-care I do, it was your first. So it was clearly like one of the most important, but probably like one of the most challenging. So I've definitely already been inspired there. I've been known, this is super embarrassing, but I'll like watch a show on my phone and the phone will like fall on my face because I'll like fall
We've
asleep.
all done it. We've all done it for sure.
All
It's so,
right.
and it changes so hard. And that's why when I work with clients, we do a lot of mindset work, which is another pillar. And we start with that because mindset and stress and hormones, people think, well, what's the connection? The connection is everything. So when we start, we do an activity to really explore each client's values and kind of what they want their future self to be like. And that's the person you're doing these things for. Who do you want to be in however many years? And so I look at it that way. And that's the approach that I take with my clients. And it's really a powerful activity. And if people can really dig into the why they want to make the change. And sometimes, if you have body composition goals, a number on a scale is not enough. And I think that that's what leads people to these quick fix restrictive programs, because they're just looking for that quick fix and not the deeper change, and really think about why they truly want this and how they want to feel.
Yeah, absolutely. And so would you lay out, since we've already touched upon one of the pillars, would you lay out, and you can include that one just as you name them, would you name all 4 pillars? And are these pillars that are part of your program, or are they something that you have developed?
Mm-hmm. So these are the pillars that I use in my signature program. It's called Balanced Life Academy, and it's for women in perimenopause and menopause who want to, get rid of those symptoms: fatigue, weight loss resistance, difficulty sleeping, digestive issues. Those are the big ones that I hear, but I could keep going. And so what I do, whether it's in a group or one-on-one, is we work through the pillars of stress and mindset, nutrition, of course, and hydration, sleep and rest. And I have those different because as different topics because they're very different things, right? There's sleep, which you have to have enough of, but then there's rest, when we're truly doing something that we find joy in. And a lot of us don't make time for that. And it's a huge piece of who we are and how we regulate our nervous systems, which goes back to that stress and mindset. And then the fourth pillar is movement.
So we can kind of finish out sleep and rest because we've already started the sleep one, and then we can visit each of the other pillars. So it is interesting because it took a lot of days of being sick and working to finally take a complete day off. But even on my work days, I would get those 15 minutes of like rest. And I would like you to share about when you're doing something joyful, it's rest. But for me, it was, I wasn't going to sleep, but I could let all systems disconnect and let that like restoration or restoring happen in my body. But can you speak to the rest component of getting enough sleep and then rest?
Right. So rest is really what I just consider downtime. It's doing something that you love. For some people, it could be like painting or jewelry making. Those came to mind because I've worked with a couple of clients recently who used to do both of those things. And part of their kind of homework or action plan for the week was to get back into making actual time for those things, because we all do it as we get busy and we say, well, when I have time, I will. But I have a favorite quote from Gretchen Rubin. If you know her, she's the author of the Four Tendencies. But she always says, "What can be done anytime is done in no time." And I think that that's so true when it comes to taking care of ourselves, or things that, we think of as being selfish rather than self-care. Like to take, 45 minutes to go make bracelets by yourself. As a busy person, you think, I don't have time for that, and it just depends on what you love. Maybe it's a hike in the woods. For me, it's a walk on the beach, or sitting with a book that's fiction, that's mindless. That is my rest. It doesn't have to be lying on the couch. It can be something active. It just has to be something that brings you joy, brings you peace, where you're not busy doing for others. So many of us, and myself included, it's funny, I was just talking about this on my stories the other day. I have a really hard time with that piece. I struggle with it hard, mostly because I love what I do for work now. And so it doesn't feel, I always want to be working on my business. It doesn't feel like, oh, I have to go to work. But that said, I still require that time. It's still, my brain is still working and I'm serving others. So I still have to give that a rest, and I have to make myself do it. And I really have to schedule it in because I'm a little type A. I like to call myself a recovering perfectionist.
That's like me. I'm like, my run is my rest. And then I'm like, well, maybe it's not my rest. But I feel that my kids were like magically nice and playing in a hammock in our front yard. There was like this, and the first thing I'm like, oh, I can get 45 minutes more of work done. Like I have, instead of like, this is my time to have downtime because they're engaged in like this positive way, my mind went directly towards the productivity and inevitably high stress choice, where I could have chosen so many other things to do with that 45 minutes. So what a great takeaway there. Just choosing rest, planning rest. Do you work with your clients about planning those times so the whole day doesn't go by and you look back and
Right. And, it's different for everybody. And again, even though I run a group program, I work individually with people within that group as well, because we're all so different. It what works for one person doesn't always work for everyone. It's of course true with food and movement, but it's even true with things like rest. So for example, you might be somebody who just needs 10 minutes every day, or you just need 1 hour to yourself a week and you can feel rejuvenated. So again, it's different for everyone.
I love that one size does not fit all, since we are so unique in all components. And your four pillars definitely touch upon mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual health and well-being. You can choose, are they in any order for a particular reason?
So I always start with stress and mindset, and people get a little frustrated with that because everybody wants to dive right into the food. But just tell me what to eat. But so I'll feel better. And that's a piece of it. But people say, what does stress and mindset have to do with hormone balance? And I say everything. It's a major player in metabolic and hormone function.
Please expand on
Yeah.
that.
So stress over time, all the things that cause us stress, whether it's, our kids, deadlines, traffic, social media, news right now, work emails, not enough sleep is a stressor, nutritional and mineral deficits are stressors on our body, processed and inflammatory foods are stressors, fasting can be a stressor on our body, over or under exercising, they can all be stressors. And again, everybody's different, so we all have different stressors. And so what happens is when we're stressed, it elevates our cortisol and our insulin. So cortisol kind of floods our system, it raises our heart rate. The feeling, right? You're in traffic and you've got an appointment and your heart starts to race a little bit, maybe your blood pressure rises. It also boosts your blood sugar because that's giving you an energy kick that you need. And that's meant to happen occasionally, right? Like you're saving your child from, running out into the street, right? So and long ago, we were being chased by tigers. So that's meant to protect us. But what happens in today's world is those things that I just listed happen on the daily, right? And so over time, what happens is this produces excess abdominal fat for some people. It causes blood sugar dysregulation for a lot of women over 40. And it slows down our thyroid activity and our metabolic function. Our metabolism slows, which again, you hear that as you age. Oh, your metabolism just slows. It's inevitable. It's not inevitable, and you can reverse it. But that's basically what stress does to us physically.
And the I'm trying to think of the right word. I'm hearing like outbursts or like temper or short fuse, those things that, again, as a kid, I'm like, my mom's yelling, and then I'm like, I'm yelling. and and those are hormone imbalances as well, that mental health component of feeling dysregulated. Do you agree with that?
You do. Yeah, for sure. And for women, that have a cycle, that different weeks you feel different. And there's some weeks that you're yelling at your significant other for no reason, and other weeks where you're not. And that's that hormone dysregulation.
So you approach stress and you also approach mindset. Now, I always think it's really important because a lot of these words, mindset, mindfulness, like have become very commonplace these days. Yet I think the definition is always like inferred as opposed to explain. So how do you define mindfulness, or not mindfulness, no, mindset?
Mhm. I think that's a great question. I think that there are two parts. I think that we all have to find ways to calm our nervous systems. And I think that we all have to find ways to change our mindset in a way that serves us, whether it's to take care of ourselves or to, whatever it is that you struggle with, whether you feel like, time to yourself is selfish or taking care of yourself is selfish. How can you change that mindset to, well, if I take care of myself, then I can better serve others? And I think there's a fine line. We don't want it to be toxic positivity, and again, I think it's just that 1% better. So I work with my clients to do both, to change their mindset and find ways to calm their nervous system so that in the moment when they have that reactive event, they might be able to say, okay, let me just take a breath first, or say, like, sometimes when I was teaching, I taught mostly first and second grade, and sometimes, kids would get into whatever, a problem with each other on the playground or whatever, and I would say to them, I need you to go sit down over there, and I'm not ready to talk to you just yet, but I'll let you know when I'm ready. And of course, I was being professional, but if we can take that into our lives, even with our own children and even somebody at work, like I just need a minute. And it's okay to say that. So we work a lot on that.
Oh, I love that. So stress reduction and mindset work, mindset shifts and exploration. So that is a pillar, and it is number one. It's what we get to in order to, it goes back to hearing you share why the why is so important in this journey, because otherwise it is a diet or an exercise program, right? And all of the mindset and stress reduction not only supports the hormone balance, but also gives that, you said, values. Like, so someone is learning like their own personal values, their own why, their own intentions behind the work. So what is the next pillar?
So the next pillar for my clients is nutrition. And we talk about how to balance your plate in a way that really emphasizes what we are adding in as opposed to what we need to cut out. We talk a lot about protein. We need more protein as we age. We need a lot more protein after 40 than we did in our 20s and 30s. So we talk a lot about that. We talk a lot about nutrition as well as hydration and how that supports our system and what works best for everyone.
Oh, it's so refreshing to hear you say the focus is on addition over subtraction, or adding over what we're taking away from you. It's actually something I came up with years ago, addition over subtraction. I wrote a blog post when I had a blog. When someone's moving through their recovery journey, whether from eating disorders or from substance, is that instead of like, we're going to take this thing away from you that's for all intents and purposes been serving you in some way, we add different lifestyle changes and different tools and techniques and practices, different mindset shifts, etc. And so when we're adding, instead of thinking like you don't get these things anymore, eventually there's not much space on the plate.
Right.
And yeah.
What's been so, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No.
what's been so interesting to me as a health coach, when I do a nutrition audit on clients, which I do with all of my clients, I would tell you that 99% of them are not eating enough. Somewhere in the diet world, we got that, oh, you need to eat 1,200 calories if you have a body composition goal, and you can't go beyond that. If you log into MyFitnessPal and say you have a weight loss goal, it gives you a 1,200 calorie. That's what you can eat for a day. No, that is not enough unless you're literally going to sit on your couch all day and not move at all and not go to work and not take care of your family and not take care of yourself. And I do not recommend that. So I get a little passionate about that because that is the number one thing I see with nutrition in women specifically. They are not eating enough, and really more specifically enough protein.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and once again, so it's not, it is about adding more rather than restricting. So with that, are you designing programs, or are you working more towards like, is there an intuitive component to it with education? What is your approach to nutrition? And I am asking like purely out of curiosity. I know that you do give information and education, so someone can sit and learn what having these things in your daily diet, or for lack of better words than diet, but like your daily food consumption, you can give the information and share what will be beneficial for hormone health. But how do you approach it in a setting of one-on-one or group coaching?
Yes, I'm happy to share. So I give it all away for free. Literally, if you go to my Instagram page, pinned to the top is my plate structure. So you can get that for free. Also, I have a freebie that I'm going to offer to all of your listeners about protein and why it's so important as we age, and how much you need and easy ways to get it. So that is a huge piece of what I do. So my balanced plate approach includes protein, fiber, healthy fat, and greens and other veggies. And I tell people specifically how to add that in to balance that plate for healthy hormones. That's the way I approach it.
Awesome. So check it out. The links will be in the show notes, and yeah, education and information and just an opportunity, to learn, and to learn how to support, whether you're in this perimenopause, menopause stage, or whether I'm sure this holistic approach, from the integrative nutrition, you said it was a whole person, approach, would be beneficial for everyone. So thank you for sharing that. And then moving from the nutrition focus, which I love to hear you say, like when people come to you, it's very much like that's front and center. And what is after the nutrition component?
Then we work on sleep. Sleep and rest comes next, and we talked a lot about that. So that to me is really important as well. And then the fourth component, and the one I actually move into last, is movement. And it doesn't mean I don't think people should be moving, but that's just the order that I take. And so for movement, I feel like everyone needs to be moving every day. I think that a lot of us discount walking as exercise, and it's so important. And I know you're a runner, but for some women, running isn't serving them in the way that maybe it used to, especially if they're really, really stressed. That intense cardio, it really depends on where they are with their stress levels. And so, but I do encourage a lot of movement, and I encourage my clients to work up to at least 7,500 steps in a day, because what I find is I have a lot of women who are, doing sort of their due diligence and getting to the gym and getting to a class, and then that's it. Then they're sitting at a desk all day. And, it's a shock to them when I tell them, well, you're still considered sedentary because you're getting like 2,000 steps in a day. So that's a big change we make. I also recommend that women over 40 are adding in strength training to their movement routine at least twice a week to kind of maintain that muscle mass that we start to lose at a faster rate as we age. So
And
those
again,
are
common but not inevitable, right?
yes.
The muscle mass, common but not inevitable. I love that. I have aside from occasionally teaching yoga, I have a very sedentary job for many, many hours of my week. And I take walk breaks. And I also, on this podcast, have several now walk with me episodes. So just bringing more different ways to be mindful when walking. I do love me a good, inspiring podcast interview while I'm walking. But these episodes are not that. They're ways to bring like mindfulness and presence to your walk. So I'm quiet a lot. I get suggestions of like where to bring focus and attention. And I have them from lengths of the majority around that 10-minute mark, because like you don't need a ton, or you can do them several times a day. I have one 30-minute walk that's guided, but I am about to create a 5-minute episode due to the need for people like me that are sitting at that computer to, if you're doing the Pomodoro method and you're like 25 on, but to know that like 5 minutes, I say this as well, taking time gives you time. So it feels like if I just push through this, I'll be so focused, but then I'll notice I can't type correctly. Like I'm always like switching a letter around. No, stepping outside, fresh air, nature, and even for just those 5 minutes, that's why the Pomodoro method is so effective, is you're designating these break times. So likely in the next couple days, I'll probably do a 5-minute walk with me episode, just to also let you know that taking time gives you time. So I'll sit back down and be way more productive and more present, because I've tapped into presence, and movement, and all of the, the benefits that come with that as well. So I appreciate hearing your, what is the word, like not approval of walk as a method, but how you think that walking is a good method.
Yeah.
And joyful movement, yoga, things that are like less cardio, and then incorporating that strength training as well. So
Yeah, I'm a big bar enthusiast. So I love yoga, I love bar, Pilates, anything like that. You have to find what you love. And I think that that is super important, because if you're looking at it as punishment, like I have to do my workout, you're not going to keep up with it. So it has to bring you joy, and that might take some experimenting, and that's okay. Now, that is not to say that every day I walk out this door and say, I cannot wait to work out. I'm so glad I get to work out instead of sitting on the couch with a cup of coffee. Obviously, that's not always the case, but I do it for how I'm going to feel when it's done. And I'm also so glad that you mentioned the 5-minute walks, because I said move your body for at least 30 minutes a day, but it doesn't have to be 30 continuous minutes. And that's pushback I get from a lot of clients. Well, I don't have an extra 30 minutes to walk. And I love what you said, because I always say to them, okay, do you have 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 10 minutes here? Because if you don't, then you really need to sit back and look at your schedule. If you tell me you don't have 10 minutes to go outside and take a walk, right?
that's the quote. And I'm not sure the source of this quote, but if you don't have 10 minutes to sit in meditation, then meditate for an hour. They're saying exactly what you said, is that then that's the greater problem, is that we need more, if you're not being able to carve that time out. So I love it. And this might be harsh, but I'll often guide people who are resistant into, and I have a kind of a free thing on YouTube, and it's called 21 Soft. It's my personal pushback to 75 Hard. I'm into strength training, and I'm into like working out. If you know me, fitness and running, but I have a big pushback towards like that type of intensity, and also like after. So I created 21 Soft, and it's 21 days of like self-care, gentle movement, joyful movement, journal prompts, like just a real easy, soft. And they're literally 5 to 7 minutes. I think they're all under 10. And if I ever do, now that's just a free, fun offering. But if I'm working through these tools with clients and I receive the pushback, this is the harsh thing I speak of. I ask them to go look at the time thing that shows how much time they've been on Instagram. And I do it to myself. So I'm not like a big meanie or anything. I do it to myself when I feel just so busy. And then I get real. You have like, and it goes back to the values and the why and what's important. And also that stepping back of like, why am I feeling the need to get into the scroll zone? What needs to be addressed outside of that? So that's my response to the I don't have time. And I am a busy mom of young kids, and I could easily step into that until I check my Instagram time, and I'm like, well, you had 30 minutes. Like that was 30 minutes. And so, and no judgment. And I do also like, no judgment out there, because I'm the listener, I'm everybody. So but yeah, so I'm glad that we could split up the 30 minutes, or the 1,000 steps here and 1,000 steps there in your program as well.
I love your response to 75 Hard. I get asked about that often. And my question to people is always, well, what are you going to do when it's done? That's the thing with these restrictive programs. Of course they work. Of course they work. But then what are you going to do when it's done? Nothing's changed.
They'll have a margarita, because that's what I see. That's the one
And
thing.
a giant plate of nachos. And, in my program, you can have the giant plate of nachos whenever you want them.
I like
That
now.
because difference.
I have to step in with that because that specific thing, I again, I had so much of a response, I created my own, program. But I do love the idea of practicing consistency. Of and you shared something that I'm on the same page, that not everything is going to be the tool in the moment, so it's great to have an abundant toolbox, right? But there are some things, well, like your 4 pillars, they each are addressed daily and consistently. So even if you can change up the movement, it's still movement, right?
Correct.
So my latest consistency that I'm actually like quite proud of is I'd worked really hard, because I find it to be very impactful, is doing a 10 gratitude every morning before anything. It just connects me to my core, it connects me to my why and my values. No gratitude too big or small. But I struggled. It probably took me like a year of trying to do these 10. And there's something big about the 10. 10's a lot. It's a lot of gratitude to come up with. And I struggled for a really long time. And then I would skip days, and then I would start with 1 and 3. And I finally feel like it's a part of, it's like brushing my teeth now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really proud of that, but it took a lot of work. So it's the one thing. So I don't sit down and actually, I listened to Young Pueblo on Hurdle podcast, who has like a 2-hour meditation practice. And I do remember when I was like truly sitting, never for 2 hours, more like a 20-minute, and how impactful that was. So I know we're inspired, we learn, we're given tools and build our toolboxes, but so my only like kind of yay on the 75 hard is that you're like literally committing to 75 days of this type of training, but none of the things in the program, but giving yourself that time to build a habit, though that's not what happens, as we both have observed. It's not habit building because it's so extreme. So I like that habit building in a soft and gentle way.
Right. And how to build these habits and make them sustainable for a lifetime, not just for 75 days.
Right. I love it. We are nearing the end. I feel like I could like ask so many personal questions, but I will hold back. That said, listeners, I want to talk to like one person, but then I know that there's so many people out there. So all of you who are listening today, if you have those burning questions like I do, Rose is on Instagram. I'm going to give like the way to find Rose in the bio, just to connect, drop a DM, give some takeaways or feedback from this podcast, from this conversation. So I just want you, just connect, because again, I feel like this conversation can go on all day. And if you who are listening is like me, please reach out. Also, don't hesitate to share your takeaways with me. That would be fantastic. You can do that in many ways. If it's YouTube, give a subscribe and a comment, and the thumbs up I just did on camera. My kids are so good at that. They have a few little YouTubes. They're like, and give a thumbs up. Like Apple Podcasts, there's an opportunity to review the podcast and give stars as you see appropriate. That would be really helpful as well. And I think Spotify is starting to have some interactive ways to let us know your takeaways from this conversation. I'm going to have a final question, since my final question is often like, what are you doing for your self care? And I already asked that. My final question would be, if you could give wisdom at any amount. I'm not going to say like 3 things or any amount to you before you knew that the exhaustion, and I'm going to just include irritability and the migraines and all the struggles, and I'll even say like the suffering of hormonal imbalance, before you knew that yeah, it's common. It just happens. It's gonna happen to all of us. This is my new normal, right? Before, when you were sitting in that space of just, yeah, this is my new normal, what would you say to that person now?
I love this question. So if I had the chance to speak to my younger self, I always would say, don't push through. That is not the answer. Just because you're strong doesn't mean you can't be strong. It's you can still be strong and not push through, and take the time to take care of yourself and to figure out what's going on, and don't just accept the answer that it's normal and everything's fine.
I love that. That's beautiful. Like, that's so compassionate. I got like a warm hug when you were like speaking and just saying like, don't push through. And um, so beautiful. So thank you so much. Do you want to share anything about your program, when you offer it? Is there
Yeah.
just a waiting list or open enrollment?
So the best way to connect with me is on Instagram. I'm at Cleaner Life with Rose. Come see me over there. You can DM me anytime. I would love to chat with you. I do have that free resource. It's in my bio, but it's also, Sarah will put it in the show notes. And my next round of Balanced Life Academy, which is my signature program that launches actually in January, but I am offering a Black Friday deal coming soon. So you want to get on the wait list for that. And that's a container of like-minded women who want to put an end to their perimenopause and menopause symptoms using the pillars that we talked about. And I would love to have you there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you all for listening today. And as always, wishing you peace, power, and presence.